All right, welcome to another episode of the Vets and Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Will Curtis, and this week I am joined by a mortgage pro from the Navy. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, Chris, tell us, what did you do while you were in the service?
I was a cryptologist, basically Morse code and interception collection. So, Navy spook.
So, I would imagine not a lot of jobs in real estate looking for Morse code operators and all that. I'm sure there's a lot of codes, but how in the world did you go from, cryptology and all that into real estate?
It's one of those things where I'm pretty good with numbers, and it just seemed to be a fit. So once I had the opportunity to get into a company that would help with the pre-license, I did that, passed the first try. So there I am.
Awesome. So with the licensing side, we've talked about the residential and kind of commercial licensing for salespeople, and that varies across states and all that. What does it look like on the mortgage side?
Yeah, so you have to do what's called the SAFE Act. It's a 20-hour class. It's very dry, but once you do that, if I liken it to like a life insurance or Series 63, Series 6, something like that, where you've got to take a course that's going to determine whether or not you have enough acumen to collect and then to be able to do it. Because it's all the back end stuff. None of it has to do with your daily operation, but it's so you know all the ethics and all the legalese and everything. And then you go and you take your test. As long as you pass, you're in. If not, you have to wait 30 days. So luckily, I passed first try.
So it's just one single test covers you for the entire country. Is that how that works?
It's it's state specific. So I started out with passing the test. Like I'm in Georgia, and then once you're into that, then you can gather other state licenses as you want. It's kind of a minimal fee. You got to just pass their basic CE courses and things like that. But if you operate under a bank, that's separate. The bank has a national license in many cases where you can write in all 50 states, but you're under the bank license. If you get your individual, then it's whatever state you individually license in.
Gotcha. So once you get the license side of it, obviously there's a business to be built. How do you go about building a kind of a mortgage brokerage business? How in the world do you even start with something like that?
Yeah, you just have to be really good at networking. You can't just sit on your laurels and hope family and friends send you business. I attend a lot of different business clubs. I pop in. I haven't done it as much this year, but for a long time I would pop in on open houses. I would host any kind of thing possible. So you just have to be willing to get yourself out there, and it takes time. You're not going to start knocking stuff down right away.
So, I mean, obviously you're probably out there talking with realtors. You're kind of coaching, mentoring on, how to start buying a home, that sort of thing. I imagine that's a lot of the front end lead work, and then as well, just kind of talking to the consumer on a regular basis as well, kind of being prepped and ready to go.
Exactly. Yeah. You give away as much knowledge as you can, because in doing that, and I get people, I will go in and answer questions and I won't even say what I do. All of my information is public. So if they click on my name, they'll be like, oh, this guy actually knows what he's doing. And I get leads from that all the time because I just answer the question. I don't go, hey, here's the answer. And by the way, here's all my contact, call me, blah, whatever. I try to do a lot of that so that, one, it just helps that person. If they reach out, great. But a lot of times I get people like, hey, I saw what you posted on that answer. I want to talk to you about, residential mortgage or a commercial or whatever.
So it sounds like, and I'm kind of reading between the lines, you're doing quite a bit on social media and all that as well, then to kind of build that business.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I'm in a lot of groups, and again, a lot of that is me not posting on the discussion board. It's just answering the questions of the people who are. I feel like you get just as much from that as posting a "Hey, I'm a lender," kind of deal. So I go in and do that, and that's outside of all the other stuff that I do with any business clubs, expos, whatever else I can get my hands on.
Yeah. So, how did you go from Navy intelligence into mortgage? I mean, it doesn't seem like that's a straight path, or not every, you know, naval intelligence or cryptology folks are heading right into mortgage. How in the world did you go from point A to point B?
Yeah, I didn't. When I got out, I tried to stay within my clearance, and it didn't happen to work out. I think part of that, like I uh, said before, was regionally. I'm in North Georgia, not exactly a hub for intel gathering, and just happened to come across it at the first mortgage bubble back in 08, '09. If you've seen the movies, that have come out about that. The company closed down, so I left it and went somewhere else and just found my way back a few years later because it still held an interest. I thought it was going to be a really rewarding career, and so I kept it in the back of my mind and jumped on the next chance.
So, how long were you in it during the crash?
Uh,
Just got yourself in it and then right back out? Did you
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
get a run through all that?
the company, as soon as we were brought on board to start training, they closed literally within a week, and basically we had nowhere to go. We didn't know what to do, so I didn't know that I could just go to another place and continue
Mhm.
that education. So I was kind of like, okay, well, I knew from owning a truck freight brokerage, I was like, I can go into that immediately and not have to worry about, not having income or something like that. So I went back to what I knew for a little while and then looked for an opportunity later.
Yeah, and I can imagine that's got to have been exciting because during, before the bubble popped, I mean, the lending side, y'all were making some serious money. It was a great time to be in that side of the industry because you're writing loans all day long.
Oh yeah, they had all the fun stuff. One of them was called the Ninja, no income, no job. I
Right.
mean, just hey, you are who you are. And I bought my house in 2001. So it was Wild West when I bought. I did use the VA loan, so there were some guardrails, but um, I don't remember doing a third of the stuff that you have to do now when I bought.
Yeah, I could certainly imagine, and I know I felt weird in all this because I was deployed through most of that,
Yeah,
so I felt like I was out of touch with what happened in the bubble. And of course, as I graduate or as I get out, sorry, and start working in the industry, is right at that tail end of the bubble. So it was one of those. I'm like, well, what do you mean? There's a whole housing crash? I was in the middle of Iraq. I have no idea what's going on.
yeah,
And now going back and looking and studying, it's fascinating all the things that went on during that time. And of course, I'm sure seeing it before the collapse and then now after the collapse, I'm sure there's a lot more guardrails, there's a lot more stops, a lot more protections that are in place. That I'm sure the training you took, in kind of the '08 time period versus years later was just drastically different.
yeah. That's where the Safe Act came in because in the with the company that went under right away or closed their Eastern, there was no Safe Act. It was, can you make a bunch of phone calls and talk people into mortgages? Yeah, sure, why not? Um, and then and then later when I went back, it was like, no, you got to take this. You got to take this fully vetted course. You got to cram. You got to study. So, and, and it was difficult only because it's just very dry. You have to want to do it in order to get past that test. And so for 2 straight weeks, I sun up to sundown. I was studying, and that's what it took to get through that because it's just so dry. Um, but yeah, it wholly different, and that's where the CFPB came out of, and all those things now that are in place to protect the consumer from all that. And when I bought in 2001, when that crash happened, I saw the value of my house drop below 50%. I mean,
Wow.
and my wife and I had serious thoughts. We knew people who were giving up their houses, and we thought about it, and we just decided, no, we're going to hang on to it, and we're paying more than we should, but we stuck with it, and now the reverse is, we've got a ton of equity now. So
Yeah. Well, that's the nice thing about real estate. Over the long haul, we generally go up. There's
Yeah.
ups and downs, but
Yep.
over the long haul, that's why so many people love real estate as an investment. So as you started, how long did it take you to actually start making money? Because this is all commission sales, I'm
Yeah.
assuming, right?
Yeah.
You eat what you kill.
Yeah. Yeah. It took a little bit. We were given a stipend for the first little while, basically enough to, pay groceries. Um, but it takes a little while to get traction because you're having to start from scratch, and these real estate agents don't trust you. The people they're like, hey, look, Chris, you're a nice guy, but this is a house. This is a $500,000, you know, big time purchase. We want to go with our bank because we know them. Those kind of things. So it just you have to be willing to put in the grind, and if you do it, believe me, it pays off.
So, I mean, how long are commercially tell people it's 2 years before
Yeah.
you start making some money. In residential sales, 90 days to maybe 120 days is typically the thought process there. So in doing mortgage and lending, what are you guys typically seeing? I guess as a broker, not as a banker.
I would say if you give it 90 days to 6 months, if you're starting straight from scratch, and the only reason it might take that long is if you don't have a very good presence online. But if you're someone
Okay.
who already has that and can flip that to what you're currently doing, I mean, you might get a deal right away. And with like real estate and those guys, when the house closes, they get paid like that day, maybe the next day, whatever it
Mhm.
is. When you're on the mortgage side, when that loan funds, it can take 30, 35 days before you get paid. So if you start one immediately and then you close in 30 days and then you're getting paid maybe 30 days later, just the way it's set up typically, so that's 60 days at a minimum right there. So
Yeah.
if 90 to 6 months, then if you can have that flexibility, as long as you get something going in the pipe and constantly feed that pipe, you're going to be fine.
So from a from a brand new lender coming in, how are you looking at kind of building that business? How are you looking at making sure you get paid? Like, what does that look like in the first early years? And I know you've been at it for a little bit, but you now manage and have new folks coming in. And
Yeah.
how are you guys coaching them into that side of the business and making sure they're successful?
One, they've got to know the follow up. A lot of folks get into it, they're told no, or they're told, they don't get a phone call, or they don't get a return, or something like that. If you're not getting essentially 7 to 10 touches with somebody, it's not going to turn into an app. Even if they're ready to go right away, sometimes you've got to continue those touches with that person. So we just tell them it's like, it doesn't always have to be, hey, are you ready to apply? People that do that, they call it commission breath. It's what have I not answered for you? Or, you come up with something else. Sometimes I told a guy yesterday that I was coaching him. I was like, go back through some of your old ones and just say, hey, have a nice weekend. Was thinking about you. That's it. Nothing about mortgages. They'll be like, who's that guy again? Oh, hey, he's the mortgage guy. That was a nice thought. You know, just
Mhm.
you've got to be able to make those. And when you get somebody in your pipeline, that doesn't mean stop feeding your pipeline. A lot of guys do that, and then they concentrate solely on that one or two, like they've got a baby at the whole time. No, you've got processors, you've got underwriters, you've got all this support that's going to be working on it. You need to be putting more in there. Just because they're in processing doesn't mean it's going to close. So you've got to constantly do that, but it takes talking to those people multiple times, not once or twice, and then putting them in 6 month follow up. That doesn't do you any good.
Yeah, it sounds like a typical sales job. You're just selling something a little bit different at this point.
Yeah. When you think about it, I always try to tell people the amount of zeros doesn't matter. That if you're selling something for $10 or a million, it doesn't matter. Come with the same enthusiasm, come with the same knowledge, whatever it happens to be. It just is a bigger number than some of the other stuff you're used to selling.
Okay.
And
No,
it doesn't mean
that makes sense.
it doesn't mean don't take it serious. But a lot of people, when they go to sell this stuff, they think out of their own wallet. You can't do that.
What do you mean by think out of their own
Or
wallet? How,
I can't afford that house, so the Joe Joe that I'm talking to, I need to talk him down, or maybe I can't get that one because it's a $800,000 house. You can't think of it that way. Everybody that I talk to, I assume they can get what they are or what they're looking for until I vet their info. And then at that point, if I have to adjust them downward, I adjust them downward. But I automatically assume if somebody calls me for $1 million house, they can afford $1 million house. And then I work on it from there. But if you think $1 million house is going to go nowhere, you've already lost the deal.
no, that makes perfect sense, and I could see that, especially if you don't even own a home yet or you're in a starter home. I could see where that starts to play a little bit of a different game, and kind of see where the dollar amounts get a little bit bigger. I'm assuming y'all get paid based off of a commission percentage of closed transactions, something along those lines, or is it a specific fee, or how does,
Yeah,
if I was looking at it, would I figure out how much money could I possibly earn, by going this route versus maybe selling homes?
yeah, exactly. So yeah, typically the lender does get paid less than a real estate agent in a transaction. However, the real estate agent might be selling one house a month, whereas you're writing potentially three, four, five, seven. I think my biggest month was 17 loans. So, you factor all those in, and then you get what's called basis points. Every lender is different. I would say if you go out on the commission only route where you're bringing in the leads yourself, most of the time it's um, on your standard. From what I've seen, it's one basis point, which means 1%. If you go
Okay.
into it knowing that, now there are some that definitely pay a lot more. There are some that pay less. But if you go in with that 1% knowledge, then you go, okay, what is the average house in the area that I'm going to sell? How many of those do I need to sell to make a comfortable living? I'm in Atlanta. The average house is 400 grand, give or take. You know, you do two of those. If the loans are, whatever, $800,000 worth of loans, if you're getting 1%, it's 8 grand. It's not hard math.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like it's a good rule of thumb,
Yeah.
knowing everything's going to be changing and negotiable, all that kind of fun stuff as well. But
Yeah.
at least if you're building kind of your pipeline of what it should look like.
Yeah, it's literally a starting point. It also, when you go and talk to people that you want to get involved with as far as selling for them, you can be like, okay, I'm expecting it to be around this point. If it's way less, why is it way less? Are they giving me all the leads and all I got to do is write a bunch of loans every month? Okay, maybe it's worth taking a little bit less. If they're paying more, are we having to fund a lot of those stuff out of my own pocket? you know so because I'm making all the money and essentially I own my own office, so now I got to pay for the marketing, I got to pay the underwriter out of my own pocket, or whatever it happens to be. So there's just different ways to do it. Some people like that, some people don't. So you pick which one you're most comfortable. But the average that I've seen is, you go find the business, 1%. We might give you a lead or two, but you're just a hunt. You're out there hunting.
So now, in your business, have you found that you have gravitated against, especially since you prior military, have you found that you've kind of geared towards veterans and military in finding the loan process, or finding applicants for loans, or is it just kind of you just happen to be there, or how does that?
Yeah.
I guess, how does that look at your business?
Yeah, so prior to coming on board with the veteran mortgage team, I actually did very few VA loans, and it's not that I didn't look for them. It just wasn't as many as the FHA and conventional routes. Those are 80% of all loans. It just didn't come through very often or whatever. But now with the veteran mortgage team, that is something we cater to that industry. So we try to be above and beyond. We do a lot of the coaching, we do a lot of the credit repair, things like that, that really, whatever we can do to show veterans and active duty how they can build wealth using the VA loan throughout the years. So I'm doing a whole lot more in that, and I'm learning more about the VA loan than I ever thought. I always thought I knew a good amount because I had one of those certificates, and I'm like, holy crap, there's a lot more to this. A lot of different avenues that you can get out there, and but yeah, we're heavy into that now. So we've got a lot of veterans that a lot of uh, site pages on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and all those kind of fun things where lead generation is happening and stuff like that. If you do it right, I did a video. I did this video series. It's maybe once a week where I'm walking my dog. So I've got a Mastiff breed, big old huge dog that walking around, and he always lays down at some point. And so I just sit there and say, I'm walking Andy, of course. And now I show him laying on the ground, like passed out. And then I just do a little short take on something that I saw. And that's it. And the one I did yesterday, I think it's already hit 200 views. 200 views, that's not a lot, but it's not nothing. So I'm not your viral content guy. Who knows? Maybe one day it will, but if you just do that constantly, you're going to generate that kind of stuff.
When I think that's one of the things that as we start thinking about marketing, oh, it's got to be the viral. I got to do something crazy, something edgy. I got to be the realtor that's trashing the house or whatever, that kind of stuff. And I get it. It's funny to watch, but at the same point, I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to do business with them. But I will say from my personal social media, I had a $15 million referral worth of brokerage business off of 200 view where I went deep and nerdy into stuff that I enjoy, and then this residential agent saw it and goes, "Oh God, I was going to do this deal myself until I didn't know anything about all these other things that this guy went. Hey, can you help this client? Yeah, sure. What are they looking for? Oh, it's this major franchise that's now looking at 15 locations throughout our market. I'm like, it's $1 million $1 million a site. Okay, I can put this together. We can do it. But it was a 200. I mean, maybe it got 208 views at the end of the day. It was a
Yeah,
terrible video,
yeah,
but it's also talk about the ROI.
yeah,
It's been one of my best performing videos when it comes to how much money you actually earn per video.
yeah, yeah. Exactly. You don't have to be the next big thing, but if you're putting stuff out there on a regular basis, it gets seen, and especially if you integrate it between the different platforms. Um, maybe it doesn't get anywhere on Facebook, but it takes off on TikTok with a couple of hundred views, or it doesn't do anything on TikTok, but Instagram gets 75 views or whatever. And if you get one out of that, and one thing I do is I put my email address on the video. It's just up in the corner so that if
Mm,
somebody sees it, now they can go to my profile and find it. But I just make it a habit of putting that on there. You
yeah.
can because you can add the text on the video or something like that. But I just do basic stuff. I'm not Tom Cruise looking, nothing like that. But people love dogs. I put my dog in the video. I start with him, and then they're like, okay, this guy seems relatable, and that's all you're looking for.
I can see that. I can see where that definitely, the no like and trust thing comes in pretty well. And okay, hey, dog owner, I like that dog. That's cool. Always talk about mortgages. All right, like I can see how that
Yeah,
would, naturally get going. You get a bunch of dog lovers that need mortgages, and there you go, and they start connecting with you through other things other than what you just do for work.
yeah. And then if you're putting other content where you're talking about the Fed, their announcement yesterday, or
Mm.
you're talking about you know, whatever other versions, if they go through and look at your content, they're like, okay, he does this video with his dog, but then here's something that I haven't heard before, or that, hey, that's a
Mhm.
really good technique on how to repair credit. You know, there's some tips on credit that I just post online all the time because people don't know about it. I'm like, here you go. These are free tips. I don't charge anything. I don't guarantee anything, but in working with credit bureaus for as long as I have, I learned some stuff. So I put it out there, and if it helps one person, great.
So now, as you look back at your time in the Navy, and then now your career now as a lender, is there anything that you can just one or two things that you can look back and saying because of my time in service, this has made me successful?
Oh yeah, it's the whole community part of it. So even when you're in the military and you hate the dude next to you, you're still gonna take a bullet for that dude. So when you translate that into working in this kind of industry, you automatically feel like you're going to go to bat for that client all the way through to the end till it's either a deal or it's not a deal. And they can see that. They can see that what you're pushing for isn't to make a commission. It's to get that person into a house. And if you do that, you're going to get way more deals and they're going to understand that, hey, this guy's going to take care of me. I still have people calling me from when I wrote their deal in 2017, I think was when I passed my license. I get those people still calling me, just asking questions. Um, you know, because I've always given my cell number out, stayed the same number.
Mm.
And but they get that feel. They're like, hey, this guy, he understands me. So
So maybe on the flip side of that question, is there anything from your military service that you think you fight against or may have hindered your growth or your success?
yeah, probably telling people the truth too much. So I'm rather
That's one of the
I'm
answers we get.
yeah, I'm rather blunt when it comes to telling people how it works in the mortgage industry. I don't sit there and just try to sell them into doing an app, which a lot of people will do, or promise them this or that. I tell them exactly what it is. A lot of people are like, oh, "What are your rates? Whatever you qualify for." I was like, "The rates are the rates, but it's all based
Mm.
on what you qualify for." But a lot of people will be like, "Oh, I can get you at 5.5." They have no idea. Um, my brother's servicing company is promising him a lower rate because he's got a VA loan that I wrote a couple of years ago. They send him an estimate, but they didn't lock the rate.
But as we're doing the podcast and we're doing this, Chris got a phone call, kicked it off from recording. But that's a lot of this business, is it not? You got a phone call. I had two as I'm sitting here. My phone's sitting here in my lap.
Yeah.
I've had two come in. One's a client, one's a, I don't know, just random number. But our phones ring all the time. How do you manage that on top of, spouse, kids, life? Like, how do you find time to balance, everything going on when it's a huge purchase for somebody? It's absolutely the only thing they're thinking about. And you're like, it's my 15th one for this, year.
Yeah, so I take them, I take it as it goes. I'm lucky enough to where I get to work from home. I
Mm,
come and go as I please, do what I want. It allows for my wife to work part time, even though she still works 4 days. She's a dental hygienist. She loves it.
okay.
But, she doesn't have to put in 5 days. Working on dropping her down even more, you know, and she knows if I get a call, I'm just going to walk outside or go upstairs to my office and take that call. It might be 2 minutes, it might be 10 minutes, whatever it is. And then I go back downstairs and resume. Whenever
Mm,
my boys were doing stuff, they're both grown adults now. So, we're empty nesters. It makes it even easier. But when they were younger, if I was at something and the phone call came in, I would just hit the little thing that says, I can't talk right now. I'll call you back. And then when you explain why you couldn't talk earlier, they're like, oh yeah, yeah, no worries. But if it's an emergency, of course I would take it. But um, it just the nice thing about it is I can do almost every single thing for a loan on my phone. There's one or two I can't, but so I don't have to be tied to a laptop. So, a lot of stuff is pretty easy. I can be on and off real quick. So
yeah. And I think that's what's kind of made it nice, especially from 20 years ago. So much had to be done where there is so much we can do from our phones, do mobily now, that I would say that the industry has changed just so much. And I mean, I've been at it for about 15 years now, and just the amount of things that get done. Where I was teaching, last week. Um, we're still running our business. Students are still on there running their business. They're listening to the lecture, listening to what's going on, but they're still sitting there responding to what it is. Take 15 minutes, step outside, go close a deal. One's like, yeah, I had a deal blow up. I got it right back. Not in the office. They're sitting in Denver. They, live on the East Coast, but yet they're still making deals happen, making it all go through. They're not in the office. Their clients are none the wiser.
yeah,
They just couldn't answer.
yeah, yeah. I make myself readily available until I pretty much crash for the night. So and there are days where not a whole lot's going on, so I kind of work on some things around the house if I have to. And then there are days where I know it's going to be heavier. So I just make sure that I'm available for those kind of times. And then there are, trainings that I have to do. I was on with a West Coast guy last night till I think 8:30 my time, but I was walking him through how to do some stuff. And I'm hoping he's
Yeah.
one of those guys that works out, and then he'll be one of my West Coast guys. So,
Right.
you just have to, when you're in this, you just got to know it's not 9 to 5. I put that, I tell every single client right up front, I'm not 9 to 5. I don't have banker's hours. If it works best for you to talk after you're off of work or on a weekend, just give me a heads up. So, and they appreciate that.
Yeah.
Most of them will abide by. They're not going to abuse your time.
I'll say that's the one thing I was sort of shocked at as well, is that most people don't.
Yeah.
And I'll say that's where I've kind of balanced to that. Most of my agents, as I run a brokerage, most of them don't call me after hours, or at least not too late, maybe 6 o'clock. Hey, I wanted to catch you before you started dinner. But, after that, normally not as much. They're usually not a call on the weekend. But they also know if I see somebody calling me at an odd time, this isn't normal. Let me pick this one up. And you kind of judge it from there as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, last year, our youngest son just got out of the Marine Corps. He was stationed at Kaneohe. So we went to Hawaii last year, and I had 2 deals that were still in the process. Both of them fell through. One got sold to somebody else. So they basically used my client as the negotiating tool and got a better deal from somebody else. And then the other one had a bad inspection. So even though I was gone, I was still monitoring that kind of stuff. But I also told both of them, hey, I'll be in Hawaii. So I'm way behind on time. Kind of think about that if you got a question or whatever. But then, both of them actually went out, from falling out the ways they fell out. So after that, I just didn't even look at my phone the rest of the time I was out there.
Yeah. So as we kind of wrap everything up,
Sure.
We ask everybody the question, knowing what you know now and looking back on your transition out of the military, is there anything you would have done differently, or is there a lesson that you wish you just didn't learn the hard way? That way, that service member who's in your shoes as they're getting out now, doesn't make the same mistakes or struggles you made.
100%. I did not pay attention to what was being offered as far as classes or anything like that. I had the blinders on that I was getting out on a certain date, and that was it. And don't do that, because there's so much, especially nowadays, where there's way more, all the different kind of skills and stuff. Whatever, even if you think you have an interest in something, take them up on it. If you don't do it, no big deal. But use whatever services are there to your advantage, because it'll make where you're not listless when you get out. So that's what I would do. I would absolutely take advantage of those things. I didn't look for them, and when they told me about them, I didn't care.
Yeah. Well, and before we started the call, that's one of the things that we had talked about as well, was that when you got out versus today, the level of benefits, the level of training and courses and everything else there is just drastically different. And even, 15 years for me, it's almost night and day what they offer now, where we were talking about Skill Bridge, where you get internship credits and all this kind of stuff. I would have killed to have 6 months off to go figure out what I wanted to go do. And if that's what I wanted to do, it's astonishing how well the Department of Defense is taking care of its service members in comparison to what they've done in the past.
Yeah. My transition assistant was 2 days in a resume writing class, and then I went on Westpac. I got out overseas. So that's not the case nowadays. So take advantage of all that stuff. Even if you don't move into that path later, it will definitely help in whatever path you do take.
Yeah. Well, Chris, thank you so much for spending your time with us and being willing to share your story. If anybody was trying to track us down, they want to see your video about your dog and the next mortgage, help they can get, where's the best place that they can all find you?
So on Instagram, I'm at, it's just my name, Chris Gable, MLO. So for mortgage loan officer. And then on Facebook, it's just my name, Chris Gable. So when you look, I'll be veteran mortgage team. I'm based out of Atlanta. I have a TikTok account. I just started, so I haven't done anything there yet. But those are the two main, and then find me on LinkedIn. It's Christopher Gable.
Okay. Well, Chris, thank you so much for your time.
Thank
For
you,
those
Will.
that were watching, if you found value with this one, if you had questions, by all means, ask those questions in the comment section. We'll definitely make sure we get you an answer, whether Chris or myself or one of our other veterans that have made that transition and know the answer. Of course, if you found value to this or you think somebody else will, give it a share as well. And Chris, again, thank you so much for your time and being willing to be open and share your transition journey.
Thank you, Will. I appreciate it. This was really beneficial.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you so much.